So, hello everybody. I thought I'd add this postscript, and this is going to be a little different. And it's kind of about this notion of fandom, because for all the really great fans, it's kind of like the saying, all it takes is like a few bad apples, right? And this sort of occurred to me because, sometimes our love for somebody that we've never met, like a public figure, they can take on aspects that are kind of out there, right? And there have been every celebrity has this. They have fans across the line. And in lieu of Louis' comment about leaving Twitter, it appears that the line that got crossed was, Louis' boundaries. And first, I will say that what, it doesn't mean I'm not a Larry anymore. I still am. It doesn't mean that I am going to, just not talk about Sarah because I am. But I do think that what Louis was referring to was not just what people say about Sarah, but what people say about his mom and his son. Now, even if Zara is a stunt, right? Because there's no way to know. We're all speculating. We don't know these people. Is that she does seem to have a friendship with his sister, so she's kind of a friend of the family. And Louis being very loyal and protective, that's kind of his thing. It would make sense that he would be protective of her because she's close to the family, and Louis has been known to be very protective of others. So this is consistent with who Louis is. So, it's the Louis loyalty kind of built a Louis movement, right? So the Larry fandom is, as we know, is one of the most loyal, emotionally invested fandoms, like music history. Larry's have tracked body language, song lyrics, interviews, tattoos, even silence. And the narrative that has been built over the last 15 years is powerful, it's poetic, and in many ways, it's definitely built from love. And unfortunately, there have been moments that probably don't reflect well on just fandom in general, not necessarily the Larrys. But the big one that really I would say Louis has an absolute right to push back on is when the theories, like, it's one thing for the theories to be about him and Harry, but when the theories shift from these symbolic arcs of, glances and whatnot and mirroring, but when they shift to the literal and when they involve his son or suggest that he's lying every day of his life and that he's been forced into parenthood or that his relationships are all PR, um, we're not saying that the fans are wrong. It's just that sometimes, unless you're in the music industry and you understand like just the personal implications of it, it's really hard to judge because entertainment's a very bizarre industry. It really is. And because people have, people have found his number. Like there was a famous case of somebody found his number and like called, and he got really angry, which he had a right to be. And there's that level of invasiveness, which probably over time becomes it can rattle someone. And I've always said, imagine being that child one day Googling yourself and seeing these theories out there. Imagine being Louis having to perform this reality under constant suspicion, because there's always these tangents of theories, right? There's theories about Louis and Harry, and then there's these side rumors, and then there's this like there's the very fandom, and then there's these subsections that have a life of their own, like they can grow on social media. So, why does this happen? Well, fandom is kind of an emotional projection. It's sort of these parasocial relationships kind of feel very mirrored, and in particular, Louis' fandom are very, very loyal, almost like very fiercely loyal. And Larry, in particular, is not just a ship anymore. Um, it's a symbol. It's a symbol for queer invisibility, for hidden love, for the injustice that was done to Harry and Louis, and also just what was done to a lot of artists that were under the Modest and Psycho label. And Louis kind of never asked to carry that burden of maybe the really zealous contingency who go way too far, because Louis has already um, done a lot. He's endured extraordinary pressure, and we definitely want to support him, but also letting go of um, maybe the speculations that veer into spaces that really we shouldn't be veering into. He's always had to say less, but now his pushback is visible. And when Louis finally says something, he kind of means it. He does not mince words. So supporting him also means listening when he says enough, not just with the words, but also knowing kind of when it's best to not say anything, maybe, especially about family members who are private citizens. And I will say that if Louis is defending Zara, of course he would. Anyone that's kind of close to him, he would defend them, whether it's romantic or not. Like, that is a Louis thing. And doesn't mean Larry's not real, though. It just means that it's the nuance, sort of knowing when to kind of draw the line, because you can still believe in love, you can still decode lyrics, you can track patterns built to me, but I guess it's about doing it with care and knowing kind of when it's veering into the invasiveness of his life. Because as I said, Louis has protected people, and number one thing is he's going to protect his son, because these theories are out there, but keep in mind, these are real people. I don't think anyone's really forgotten that. I think the passion for the Larrys, and the passion is for a lot of Larrys, is that we don't like this thing about stunting, because let's face it, stunting is real. Stunting has been done. They arranged a marriage for Rock Hudson. I mean, Hollywood, like when they had the studio system, was known for this. Like, this was a thing. Tab Hunter, it's an actual thing. And I always say Simon Cowell had a colleague that ended up being imprisoned, and he there's a video that circulates YouTube where this sort of colleague mentor of Simon Cowell said that if he wanted to really shut down a rumor of somebody not being straight, he would basically orchestrate a long-term relationship, and to basically shut down the rumors. And that's been done in Hollywood, and that's been done in the music industry. For some reason, people don't realize that it's still going on. Like Lance Bass, Jordan Knight. It's been done. Now the thing is, I think Louis leaving Twitter is probably because Twitter, you can no longer block anyone in Twitter. I think you can protect your posts, but then you can't have public tweets. So ever since Elon Musk bought Twitter, he got rid of the block function. Like, I'm not on Twitter because that's just too much. Um, and because of that, the block feature, the block feature being gone, it sort of makes a lot of these ideas, you kind of can't sort of curate them anymore, because you can't block someone. And that would make sense. A lot of people have mentioned that about Twitter since the takeover, since Jack Dorsey no longer owns it. So that might be part of it, but also uh, I think there's no reason for people to be mentioning family members who are not in the spotlight. And if you are a fan of Louis, then you wouldn't say things that are hurtful. And I think there's enough people that don't support Louis that say hurtful things. So it's almost like we don't need any more people saying hurtful things who do support him, uh, because to constantly sort of deconstruct his life, even if maybe someone's veering close to the truth, still he would feel, and I think anyone would feel, kind of uncomfortable. So all I'm saying is that there have been videos that are still on YouTube. They have not been taken down. There's a lot, and it doesn't take much to find them, where you see people having whole, like, 1 hour essays with their theories about his son, and because of this it means this. And I'm not saying that they don't have a right to do that. It is free speech. I'm not saying that some things they say aren't necessarily true or not worthy of examination. All I'm saying is that because these are real people, that portion of his life, sort of analyzing it is a little different than analyzing lyrics. So if, like, someone analyzes, like, his album and says, "Oh, this song seems to reply to this song from Harry's," and, "Oh, look at how they seem to be responding to each other," that that's not a problem because, hey, that's kind of their work. That that's they chose to be famous, right? So there's a certain level of there's sort of a cost benefit analysis becoming famous. Um, so that's different. I think you can't really do anything with how people receive your work. However, when I've seen people like really go deep into analyzing photos, analyzing, making speculations about all sorts of things about the parentage of right. And I'm like, oh my God, what are they doing? Because that's not a song. That's a child. And that's kind of like that's a line that does not need to be crossed because if people are decoding quote unquote, the or the what the truth is, it's a personal matter. It really should be respected as that. And if the trying to figure out what the truth is about it is kind of a because then it, it's sort of like with the goalpost of, well, because Larry's real. How can Larry be real if this happened? Life does have walking contradictions to it, but at the same time, it is possible. Like I said, Rock Hudson, he had arranged marriages because he was back then. It could have ruined his career if it came out that he was gay. So ultimately, two things can exist. Larry could be real, and yet there's Louis became father. It can happen. I mean, you read enough LGBTQ plus history, and it's really quite plausible. Anyway, just my thoughts.